Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far in, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps me a great deal. I also love to have comments in the comment section down below, so feel free to do that as well. Today, I thought it's Thursday, so we're going to be doing a 3-project video. And I thought we could do something that was textile related. So I'm going to do 3 different pendants, either using textiles or inspired by textiles. So we'll see how that goes. First one's going to be just using textiles to impress a pattern with a rolling mill. The second one is going to be a mesh tube, basically, with a cap and a little latch on it. And you should be able to, I'm going to do it for a little quartz crystal. We can keep a quartz crystal in there. And finally, we're going to use an actual piece of fabric and frame it after we mount it on a kind of an unattractive stone. So to cover up the stone and still use the stone. So we'll see how that goes. I've never tried that before. It'll be kind of a fun experiment. But before we get started, I need to thank some people. I have 2 new patrons over on Patreon. I have Wizard Kitty 23. I really appreciate you signing up. And David D. Thank you so much for becoming a member. I really appreciate all of your support. Thanks also to my other members at Patreon. It's getting to be quite a big group over there, and I really enjoy them. So thanks for all of your support. I love interacting over there, and I'm really enjoying having you as members. The other group is my YouTube subscribers. I have trouble keeping track, but I think it's 8,400. So that's amazing, and I can't believe we're at that point. And I continue to grow, and I really appreciate all of the support. Thanks to those of you who have been providing me with such nice comments, and also the people who are doing things like buying me a coffee. That really helps out with supplies, so I appreciate that as well. With all that being said, let's get started on these 3 projects. So here's my design idea book that I usually draw things up in. I found that in recent years that's helped me to kind of solidify the ideas in my mind when I'm getting ready to make something. And I like it because it's got this little dot matrix in the background that helps me to keep things kind of symmetrical when I'm drawing it, because I'm not terribly good at that. Here's the 3 ideas I had. One, we're going to take a piece of sheet and actually texture it with some fabric. I have this kind of, where'd that go? It's a little bag that's made out of kind of a burlap texture. So we'll use a piece of that to texture some silver with a rolling mill. And then I'm going to make it kind of wavy like this, probably using my bail making pliers, we'll see. And then off camera I'll probably add a bail to it. If you want to see how to make this kind of bail, which I'm going to use on both these first 2, put a link right up there for you. There's a complete video about that. Second one, I'm going to try to create a mesh cage out of 18 gauge wire that's a cylinder, and I have a little quartz crystal. I was going to try and make it big enough to contain this. I'm going to put a cap on the bottom and a strip around the top of it here, and then a cap that fits right on top of that, and I'm going to try and create some little clasps on either side that clip down to it. And like I said, I'll put a bail on it off camera probably. Finally, I have a shirt that my wife doesn't wear anymore. This is a little piece of fabric out of it. It's got some really pretty colors and patterns in it, so I was going to cut a piece out of there. And I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to use this round stone or one of these kind of bland phosphosideриtes that I've never been all that fond of. But we're gonna cover the stone with that and create a frame for it, like a bezel, and mount it from the back. And hopefully that'll work and create kind of a cool looking piece. But we'll give that a try and see how it comes out. So let's start though with the texturing the piece of silver. I wrote 22 gauge sheet on here, but I changed my mind before we got started. I'm going to use a little piece of 18. I cut it a little big. But let's go put a texture on this off of this piece of burlap. I had a better thought. Just use an X-Acto knife. So I want to get a piece that's big enough to wrap around this because I want to texture both sides. So find something to cut out here. That's the kind of X-Acto knife you want to cut yourself with. Nice rusty one. Okay, that's big enough to just kind of contain that. Okay, so let's go over to the rolling mill. I'm going to loosen this up, tighten this down with just, you stick it in there and you tightening it down and it spits it out. You need to shove it in just a little bit further. Pretty tight. Let's see if we can get a good impression on this. There we go. That looks more like kind of burlappy. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of squaring this up and then filing the edges, and then we'll anneal it so that we can bend it a little easier, and then we'll make some waves in it. See how that goes. One thing I do think I want to do though is I want to round all these corners so they're not too pointy. It's going to be a pendant. We don't want it to be dangerous. That's no good way to have repeat customers if you cause them to injure themselves with their jewelry. That's pretty good. Okay, if you've never done this before, or if you're new to silversmithing, when you run something through a rolling mill, it compresses the metal really hard. Same thing as if you're pounding on it or bending it back and forth. It gets what's called work hardening. And so in order to soften it back up again, because it's really stiff and hard to bend right now, I'm just going to heat it up to the point where it's kind of a dull red. And then let it cool. So we'll let that cool for a minute. While that's cooling, let's find something we can put I want to put a jump ring on there to attach the bail to. So I'm going to find a little piece of maybe 16 gauge round. So find some of that. I don't think we need a huge loop up there. Maybe do something like this. Okay, so this will roll on in a minute, but I think let's start in the middle here. I'm going to try and line up the top and the bottom like that. Let's see if I can't use some, if you're able to see this or not. See the edge of the table here. We'll do a little bit of bending this way. Try bending this one back the other way. Get a little more leverage on the end there. Just trying to get this sort of regular, but with a little wave like that. That'll be kind of fun, I think. Might look cool that way too, if you put the veil on the top there. I'm inclined to think that way is better, but I guess we'll see. I rubbed off a little bit of the texture there because I was getting kind of manhandling this a little bit. Probably could do that better, but I think we'll just kind of deal with it. So I got a little bit of solder here. I do a little type of soldering called pick soldering a lot, so that's where I pick up a bit of solder on my pick and I'm able to place it precisely where I want it. So if you're interested in that, there's a video up there. It's a useful skill. I have a little bit of solder on the pad already, so I use hard silver sheet solder for almost everything, and I use liquid flux called My-T-Flux, which I was just spraying on there. I'll solder this ring closed. Should be enough solder to attach it there, but let's make sure we flux this piece too. I'm going to add a little bit just to make sure it's a good solid solder joint. We'll go ahead and throw that one in the pickle for a while. We'll start to work on the second one. So I did a little bit of math for this. I want it to be big enough for this to fit in there. And I know that the circumference of a circle is pi times diameter, so I measured this. This is about 11, so I rounded up to 12. Multiply it times 3.14 comes out to 37.68. So I think I rounded up to 40 from there just to be safe. And we got 42. So I just wanted to make sure I had enough room there because I don't want to end up being too short. I also kind of measured about the height of this, and again we can cut that shorter if we need to probably. But I think the easiest way to do this probably would be to get the, I think it's the warp and the weft when you're doing this kind of thing. So I filed the ends of these wires, so it should be long enough to stretch in there. And let's cut some little tiny bits of solder, and I'm gonna sweat a little bit of solder on the end of each of these, and then I'll just line them up like that, and we should be able to heat the whole thing and get it to stick with a little luck. So we want to get everything fluxed. This wire too. I don't know if I probably have too many of these things, which is fine. I'd rather have too many than not enough. I'm really not looking where they're over here. I'm looking mostly how far apart they are up here. I could have measured and made little marker marks, but you know. I think that's probably close enough. Some of these videos I'm trying things I've never really tried before, so it's kind of a fun experiment, but I'm not always sure it's going to work. So I've done some meshes before. I did a cherry pie pendant once. It had a lattice top on it, and that was kind of fun, but I used a little bit of flat strip kind of stuff. So similar to this. If you're interested in that, I'll put a link up there for you. That was kind of a fun one. That was from my, every month on my Patreon I give them a kind of a prompt of some sort in order to inspire some out-of-the-box thinking. And that month it was kitchen stuff, so anything related to the kitchen. So I did a cherry pie. This month's Patreon thing is actually knickknacks, so I still have to come up with something that has to do with knickknacks. I have to think of all the knickknacks I've had in my life. Okay, so I have found when I'm doing stuff like this, if I want to get the weave nice, you need to pull these every other one apart like this. See if we can get that to pull down tighter. Got to be a little careful about these wires. If they're kind of up and exposed like that, it's easy to melt them. So usually getting the first one in is the hardest one when you're doing this kind of thing. Hopefully without melting any of those wires. Thought about doing something with an argyle, kind of made out of wire, argyle print. I don't know if argyle is still popular or not. Goes through phases like anything else, I suppose. Woo! See, I screwed up there. See if I can reattach that one. Cool this off and realign it, since that was had a little faux pas there. Give that another go then. We have to fix that third one in too, but we'll see. I'm going to reattach these one at a time, hopefully. I think the trick is going to be to leave, making sure it's flat when I'm soldering it. So. Well, let's hope it's a little easier from here on out. Let's get these all straightened as best as we can. Okay, so I'm going to use my plastic hammer to kind of flatten this out a little bit. Hold these down. Now let's bend these in opposite directions again. I remembered something I did on the last one that helped. You kind of make it wavy. Sometimes those will line up just perfect. Okay, let's do that one next. Bending these back and adding a third one. Alright, got that one lined up. Let's solder him on. Probably after this one I'll go off camera and finish it so you don't have to watch me do the same thing over and over again. Because once you get it started, it's not as difficult once things aren't moving around so much. I think I might have missed one on that one. Well, maybe not. Okay, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. I'll be back in a sec. Okay, I got it to go the rest of the way. Now we need to shape this into kind of a tube and decide how big it needs to be. I may need to trim off one of these, but I'm not sure yet. So let's quartz crystal. So it can be quite a bit narrower than that. So let's like that. I think we should cut it off right. Well, I think this might look pretty cool. I'm not sure if it's worth the amount of trouble it was to do, but honestly, I think I'm going to cut off right where the second one is here and then solder those to the end of this one. So I'm going to try and individually line up these points here. I cut that one a little short, which I'm not loving that too much. But what are you going to do? Okay, I'm going to do our best and see how it comes out. Okay, so ½ inch, roughly. No, this one. Alright, so I cut a couple of pieces of 26 gauge strip. One tallish and one a little bit shorter. And I'm going to make sure these are nice and straight and flat. And then I'm going to make two kind of bezels out of them, even though they're sterling silver instead of fine. And we'll mount them on some 22 gauge sheet. One will be the cap for the top and one will be the cap for the bottom. I had a change of plan on the cap. I'm going to make it so you put the crystal in and permanently close it so it can't fall out. And so I have a plan for that. Alright, so we're just going to put that on there, throw a few pieces of solder on the inside, and we'll solder it down. Okay, trim this off. I'm going to line up the solder joint with the back side there. Let's just kind of push that on there. It's nice and snug, so we should be able to just kind of tap it on there. So for the top one, I'm going to make the same thing, but I'm going to have a couple of tabs sticking up from it so I can bend those around the wires here. probably down here, so I need to make it a little wider than I had originally intended. Okay. This will be a lot shorter, but I need to mark where I'm going to put the little tabs so I can cut out part of them. So let's see, I want to make sure that's to the back. This is the back right here. So I could cut a tab. Yeah, that's the back. I like it on the sides, kind of. So how about here? Tab, maybe we need to do thirds. Pretty close to thirds. Okay. Okay, so when I line up the back side, there's the back here. That's soldered right there. Oh, there it is right there. Push that in. So we got those little tabs. We should be able to bend those over to hold it in place. But I also need to put a little jump ring on the top of this. Okay, let's solder that closed with a big chunk. This, I'm just going to push down into this a little bit. Solder that, and then I'll just plop that jump ring right in the center there, facing the way I want it to. And then I can pickle both of these. Well, actually I need to make a bail for it, but I'm not going to do that on camera, so. Everything still looks pretty copacetic. Now, I'll make a bail and pickle this, and then we'll start on the third one. In order to get things progressing, because it's getting late, I went ahead and I glued this piece of fabric that I cut out off of that shirt, and I just used a little bit of super glue that's almost expired there, so I hope it works. But and then I made a bezel for it, and I put a piece of 16 gauge round wire on the inside edge here. You can see I originally was going to do a round one, but decided to go with an oval one. Normally when I'm doing an open back bezel, this is how I do it, or a coin bezel or whatever. This would be on the back. But in this case, we're going to solder it in, and then I'm going to file it flat. And that's going to be on the front. We're actually going to mount this way, and then bend the bezel around the stone on the back. So before we do that, though, I'm going to mount silver 2 beads that sometimes I use when I want a curved, there, little curved veil on something. So we'll be mounting that on it too. And then I'm just going to let it pickle, and then when we come back, I'll show you the other ones, and we'll finish putting the crystal in there and bending those little tabs in. And on this one, we'll mount the stone in there. So I'm going to set this off to the side here. I want to make sure this is flush on the bottom. And cut myself a few big pieces of solder here. Alright, take some of this solder and make kind of oval shape out of it. I want to make sure they're all kind of touching the wire and the bezel. If the pad is uneven, which it is a little bit, this one might not be touching, so as it starts to get hot enough, I may push down slightly on the bezel to tip it that way, so that it comes into contact with that solder. If that's going to face the front, I want to make sure I get a good flow all the way around. That looks pretty symmetrical. I'm going to run a piece of wire through there just to make it sit the way I want it to, because it's trying to tip over. I can't do what it was doing, hopefully. I get that centered. I'll solder that on there, and then I'm going to let that pickle, and I will clean up all those pieces, and we'll finish them up. Okay, I'll let that pickle for a while. I'll be back. A couple of final things to do. Got everything polished up. So we're going to put this in here. Something fun to carry around with you as a keepsake. You can put whatever you wanted in there, I suppose. Now, I'm going to push these little tabs in. Okay, so we got our little keepsake holder. That feels like it's pretty securely on there. You know, you could put whatever you want in it, like I said. So that's one. I'm going to go ahead and do what I normally would do to set a stone. And then after this is all finished drying, I'll probably cut off some of this fabric. So let's make sure it's in there. So we got our three pieces. We got this one. Dimensions are a little different. I was kind of going to do a longer, skinnier one. I still like it. Here's our little holder. Change the plans on the little claspy things, but if you wanted a one that's reopenable, you could probably modify this a little bit. Keep something cool in it. And then there's this one here. Like I said, I'll trim off the extra fabric on the back and put these all on chains and take better pictures. I think there's some variations you could do here. You know, you could do, what was I thinking? Fabric and textile techniques you find throughout metalsmithing, you know, with weaving and braiding and all that kind of stuff. So sometime I'll do one on different kinds of weaving and braiding. I just used burlap, but there's all sorts of fun fabrics you can use, like lace makes really good patterns on silver if you can find some lace. There's a lot of really coarse weave things, like I'm trying to think of what that material that they make. They used to make the suits out of that had kind of a rough weave to it. If you could find some of that, I bet that would leave a cool pattern. Herringbone kind of stuff. So all sorts of fun stuff like that. As far as the whole cage concept, you could do that in a lot of different shapes. You could probably, originally I thought about doing like two squares of it and then doming them and then cupping them together like this and maybe hanging them off of a bale and putting something in between them, or just leaving it blank. But there's a ton of ideas you could do with that. And with this one, like I said, at the beginning it was kind of hard to get it started, but once I got a rhythm going with spreading those out, popping a new one in, folding them over, and then soldering them, it started to go a lot better. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching. Like I said, I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end. All right, well, that was the fabric-inspired pieces. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. I'd also love it if you check out the playlist page. I have things split up into various categories, and I think it makes the channel much more easy to navigate. So check that out, watch a few more videos, subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you. You could also, if you want to, visit the description down below for some various important links. You want to buy something off the merch store, like that notebook that I showed you at the beginning, or a coffee cup that's branded with my brand. Those are available at the merch store there. There's a link to buy me a coffee if you want to help out with some supplies. There's a link to my website if you'd like to check out some jewelry for sale. And finally, there's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that. So thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.